Philosophy has been divided into individual disciplines, that is to say, areas in which particular interest has necessitated specialists in the field. First among these is the area referred to as metaphysics, and metaphysics can probably best be described as the philosophy of what there is. One way we can ask that question is, what is real? What is the fundamental reality? Is it fundamentally universal, of which we have individual instances in the world around us? Or is it fundamentally particular, that is, built up from individual parts? When we talk about these universals, are they real things independent of the instances in the world? Or are they just names that we give to things in order to make sense of them for ourselves? We can ask the question, how many kinds of stuff are there? We have the view that there is just one kind of stuff, and this is referred to as monism. Or we can have the idea that there are many kinds of stuff. Now, when we say many kinds of stuff, we refer to that as pluralism. Sometimes we refer to just two kinds of stuff, usually mind and matter. And in that case, we'll call that dualism, since there's just the two. Monism may be all mind, it may be all matter, and there is a movement toward neutral monism. That's neither mind nor matter. Pluralism, as I say, may involve both of those things. It may add spirit as well. It may add a lot of other things besides. We will find at least one of our authors that suggests everything in the universe is made up of a different stuff from the other things in the universe. Okay, so that is trying to answer the question, what is there in the world? How do we know what there is in the world? The question of knowledge. That field is called epistemology. We may ask ourselves, where does knowledge come from? Some people will say it comes from the senses. These people we identify as empiricists. Other people will say we discover it through reason and reflection. And these people we will call rationalists. There's at least one third school that suggests that it's kind of a hybrid thing, and those are pragmatists. And we'll see some other little specialties as we go along. But in general, those are the divisions. Is it our senses? Is it our mind? Is it some unique combination? Okay, now we have a world that has stuff in it. We know things about it. Or maybe we don't. There is a school called Skepticism that says nobody knows anything. We want to know how to behave in this world. Now that we're out in this world, how should we act? What's the right thing to do? What's the wrong thing to do? Do right and wrong actually make any sense? Are they real judgments we should even be interested in? Ethics over the years has been a case of either we judge individual actions or we judge the character of the person doing the actions. When we look at the actions themselves, we're going to ask, did they do it for the right reason? Were they doing their duty? And we call that deontology, from the Greek word deontos, meaning duty. Have you done your duty? Did you do your duty? If you didn't do your duty, well, let's not go any further. Then there's also judging the outcomes. I know most of us have heard that the end doesn't justify the means, but sometimes some philosophers have said the only thing that justifies the means is the outcome. Is it a positive outcome for everyone involved, or is it a negative outcome for everyone involved? Does it bring happiness into the world, or does it take happiness out of the world? On the other side, we're not looking at actions, we're looking at people's nature, their character, their being. One group says there's a law governing everything, a natural law, and either you behave according to that natural law or you don't. Now let's be clear on this natural law. We're not talking about, laws of physics or laws of biology. We're talking about laws that are in accord with your nature. Are you being the sort of thing you are supposed to be? Are you respecting the things in the world that are of a particular sort, deserving of respect? So natural law isn't like, well, monkeys do it, so can I. No, 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 no. In fact, it says exactly the opposite, that you as a human being have a unique nature. You may have relationships that cause aspects of your nature to become important. Natural law is worried about that kind of nature. Now, the other side of the coin says we're looking at the individual characters of individual people. Rather than the nature of the thing that you are, human, we're going to look at you, your individual character, your individual nature, your individual virtues, your individual strengths and weaknesses. What kind of pattern do you create in your life? What kind of story does your life tell? Now, there is a discipline usually referred to as the philosophy of religion. It asks, among other questions, what is a religion? How can you tell a religion from a non-religion? We're really only going to be looking at it here in terms of the existence of God. Is there a God? Is there not a God? Can we know about God? Or is God something beyond our ability to know? Now, we have, yes, God exists. This is usually referred to as theism. Theism comes in at least 3 identifiable varieties. When we take a look at the world in which we live, we have monotheism, which I'm going to credit Judaism and Islam with. I'm going to hedge a little on Christianity, but that's not your problem. That's mine. We have polytheism, many gods. 2 is many. Any more than 1 is many. So we could identify traditions that have opposing deities like Zoroastrianism. We can identify Hinduism, which suggests that there are many gods, although those many gods may well be a manifestation of just the one Godhead. But we're not worried about religion. We're worried about philosophy of religion. We're not going to discuss theology. We're simply concerned with what is the divine. How can we identify the divine? How can we describe the divine? How many flavors does the divine come in? Now, there are people who say there is no flavor of divine at all. God does not exist. Atheists. Means exactly what it says. No, theism, God. So no God for atheists. Some people think that agnosticism should fit into the theism, atheism dichotomy. Well, I just said dichotomy. That means 2. You can't have 3 and a 2. And no, agnosticism shouldn't fit in there. Agnosticism isn't a question of does God exist, but rather what do you know about God and God's existence? We'll see that there are some philosophers who say, I know God exists because I can prove it. We have other philosophers who will say, I know God does not exist and I can prove that. We're going to have people who say, I just don't know if God exists. I have a hunch that he does, and I'll live accordingly. And other persons who will say, no, I don't think God does exist, and so I'll live according to that. But it's the matter of knowledge that makes one agnostic or not whether or not you think God exists. Well, that's poorly put. It is rather that whether or not God exists isn't a matter of whether you know it. The atheist and the theist say God either does or doesn't exist. The agnostic says, I don't know about it. I just don't know. And so that's a completely different question, knowing about a thing versus it actually being there. I don't know how much money you have in the bank, but I believe you have money in the bank. So I am a money in the banker, but I'm an agnostic money in the banker. That brings us to the discussion of philosophical anthropology. This is a term I was recently introduced to in just the last few years, trying to settle the question of what is human? What is a person? In order to answer that question, we have to develop some concepts about what counts as human. Is it merely genetical material, or is there something more that goes on to being human? Or do we want to say there's another kind of thing? Call it a person. Humans are persons, at least sometimes. Some humans may not be persons. Some persons may not be humans. Well, in order to know that, you have to know what is a person. We'll have a brief look at aesthetics, the idea of what is beauty, what is art, why are there things in this world we're filled with great emotional attachment to, and other things just leave us cold. That's the field of aesthetics. Philosophy of mind. The philosophy of mind can be seen as a division of metaphysics, perhaps, but because of the emphasis in the sciences on psychology and psychiatry, there are some philosophical questions that get raised that might be different, and we'll take a look at some of those. Is the mental different from the physical? Strictly speaking, the psychiatrist is treating your brain. It was certainly the belief of the early psychiatrists that every psychiatric entity they could construct, say the id or the unconscious, that there was a corresponding physiological state in the brain. Some psychologists hold this way, some don't. Some will hold that there's an interaction between the two, that the mental and the physical are related. Others will say, no, there's no relationship whatsoever. So then we have to ask ourselves, are we monists, saying there's only mind or only matter? Or are we dualists, saying that there's both mind and matter and somehow they interact? And this leads us to the big question, one that ties both philosophical anthropology and the philosophy of mind together. How do I know you have a mind? Or perhaps more to the point, standing where you are, how do you know I have a mind? As far as I know, none of you have actually physically met me. Well, maybe a few. But as you watch this, you don't even know that I'm anything other than a collection of pixels being excited on your screen and some kind of vibration being created in your speakers. Is there a mind over here? Is there a mind out there? Are we just one mind? Or are there many minds? I hope you find this exciting. I hope you find this fun. As I say, we'll be looking at this for some time to come, and I think it's an important thing in philosophy that we engage, knowing that there are specialists working on these problems, there's special material out there, and if we keep on talking about it, we'll get a deeper understanding. Keep talking philosophy.